I do want to thank you all for being here, and I think City Attorney is finding his spot. And when you are ready, City Attorney Pfeiffer, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and President Pro Tem and Chair of the Finance Committee, Tyson, thank you very much. By way of a little bit of housekeeping here, we have a PowerPoint. I noticed that when Clerk Tyack was presenting, you had it on a screen for the general audience in the City Hall chambers to see the PowerPoint, but on TV we just simply had the personage. Will you be able to show on Channel 3 the part of the PowerPoint as we go along? So it's best if we could try to work that out. If it's amenable to you folks, we'd appreciate it. And Mr. Rutkus will help start that, if that's all right.
Absolutely, and we'll make sure that it works on all cylinders.
Thank you very much. Well, my name is Rick Pfeiffer. I am the Columbus City Attorney. It is an elected position. We're going to present to Council tonight a budget that will represent my 15th year as the Columbus City Attorney. A few thanks are in order. We want to thank the Department of Finance and Management for giving us a target number we could meet, and we worked very well with them. I'd like to thank Christy Plants, who is sitting there in the back but not at a microphone, who was instrumental in making sure our document numbers were put together correctly. And the PowerPoint was put together by Mark Rutkus, and I would like to thank him also for his work in doing that. And we hope that without a glitch, and there may be some, we can go through our presentation and show you at the same time our PowerPoint slides. First of all, as you know, the Columbus City Attorney is the lawyer for the corporate entity called the City of Columbus. We're your lawyer. As City Council, we review your legislation not as to public policy positions, but as to form. We work with all departments within the administration and Mr. Ginther's administration. They ask us questions. We try to give them answers. And as I say, we give our clients our opinion. Then it's up to the client whether or not to follow the opinion of the City Attorney or not. We have 3 office locations. We are at 77 North Front Street on the 4th and part of the 5th floor. We are at 375 South High Street, which is the Franklin County Municipal Court building. And we are also over on the 8th floor of the police headquarters, where we have our police advisors. For the citizens to know more about what our office does, I would refer them to our website. It's www.columbuscityattorney.org. I say again, columbuscityattorney.org. If they go to that, you're going to find the name and direct phone numbers and direct emails of everybody that works in our office, everybody. You're going to find all sorts of information that we think is helpful. You're going to find out that if you are a lawyer practicing in municipal court, you can see which of our prosecutors are assigned to which courtrooms. So there's all sorts of information there. So we think that's very helpful. Now, in summary, to give a bit of a historical perspective, if you take a look at the next slide, and I guess it is up, that gives you a historic perspective of where this office has come from since 2003. If you take a good look at it, you could surmise that on an annual basis, our budget increased on the general fund 1.5%. That was our increase. So we're not big spenders, we're wise spenders. So if you take a look at that, you can see that the general fund number for the proposed budget is just over $12 million. And I emphasize general fund because on another slide we're going to show you that there are other sources of income that accrue to our use. So this slide demonstrates that. Now the next slide, and this is one that I have to interpret, and I sat with Mark Rutkus earlier today to make sure that I understood the slide. But this is a comparison of the table, not the table so much of organization, but the personnel strength of the office when I took over. And since I took over, we have actually reduced the staff. So if you look at the first 2 columns, that is the full-time equivalent, full-time people. So in 2003, you can say we had 117, but now we have 109 out of the general fund. And then over in our real estate, I guess the point is, and I don't need to go through the slide, it'll speak for itself. We've consolidated and reduced the the size of the staff. In other words, I believe we have made it efficient, and I believe our folks do good work, but that I'm the boss, I'm obviously going to say that to you. Now, if you turn the page, this is what I think from a macro standpoint is important for you as the legislative body that appropriates the funds that runs our office. City Attorney, the General Fund, $12.7 million. Then we have something called the Real Estate Division, which also gets some general fund money, and it speaks for itself, $114,000. Then we have something called land acquisition. Now, what does that mean? The Chief Real Estate Attorney for the City of Columbus is David Peterson, and you'll see him and hear him speak tonight. We have various ongoing projects with the Department of Public Utilities, basically. We acquire real estate interests. We do work on projects that are basically funded by capital improvements funds. So as we do work for those projects, we bill back to the departments who then give us this money from those capital funds, and we call that the land acquisition. So you can say that's somewhat substantial. It's $1.1 million. We also generate fees, $9,000. They're fees. We also have a diversion program. In fact, there was a New York Times editorial just recently that talked about this diversion program that some prosecutor somewhere is running, and it's making him $1 million a year, which I'm not quite sure is copacetic, but we have a $51,000 that we get from our criminal diversion fund. And grants. Grants are very important. Our grant proposals are put together by Linda Helms, and you will hear Annie Murray a little later. She runs our domestic violence stalking unit, and without some of those grants, we wouldn't have some domestic violence advocates in our office. So that's the presentation. Now, what I would like to do is to showcase, or in my view, show off, the senior management of this office. And I will tell you that it's very important to know that when you have an organization, its success is based upon your senior leadership and what kind of leadership they provide to their sections. And I personally am very fortunate, which means I believe the city is very fortunate to have these individuals who you're going to see tonight make their presentation. So we're going to start with our Chief of Staff, and that would be Bill Hedrick. And so with that, Mr. Hedrick, it's yours.
Thank you, council members. I'll be relatively brief. As Chief of Staff, I oversee the administration for the City Attorney's Office. That's for 162 full and part-time employees. That ends up being a lot of work when you consider the amount we have to handle all the HR issues, all payroll issues, all the budgeting for the office, providing the office with all of the administrative needs that it needs as far as equipment and supplies. We also have an IT department with 2 people. We administer our own IT department, and we provide a lot of our own computers for the members of our staff. So that's basically what the administration unit does. We manage the office.
And if I might, Mr. Chairman, if at any time you want to stop and ask questions as we go along, clearly it's your show, but we'll be glad to answer those questions as we go along.
I appreciate that, Mr. City Attorney, and we'll see where we go, but I appreciate the brief presentation.
Josh.
Good evening. My name is Josh Cox. As Chief Counsel, I also serve as the Chief of the General Counsel section, which essentially serves as the in-house attorney for the City of Columbus elected officials, departments, agencies, offices, boards, and commissions. That involves reviewing contracts, ordinances, code review, and every edge of your seat issue from annexation to zoning. Our goal is always to keep our client from getting involved in litigation, but when that happens, we look to Mr. Mangan in the litigation section.
Good evening. I'm Tim Mangan. I'm Chief of the Litigation Section. We have 6 attorneys who handle litigation matters in federal court, Court of Common Pleas, municipal court, and the various courts of appeals. We also resolve some claims through pre-litigation, after investigation and discussion of matters with involved people and agencies. Our cases vary. Many of our cases are police-related cases, probably the majority. We also handle vehicle accidents, construction, property damages, and cases like that. Over the past year, we had 37 new cases with demands in excess of $22 million. We closed 52 cases over the past year through dismissal, occasionally a trial, and settlement, and resolving over $29 million worth of claims. We settled claims or cases over the last year in the amount of $2.4 million, a little higher than it has been in the last year or two, particularly because of two cases. One was a shooting case that resulted in a settlement of $780,000, and one was a $1 million case where a lady died after some deficient medic treatment. In the coming year, we will continue to handle the same types of cases, and I think on the horizon we have some cases that we'll have to pay attention to considerably. We have 6 shooting cases on the caseload right now, which is fairly high, I think. 5 of those resulted in deaths. We're also working on the Upper Arlington gas explosion cases. There are 9 cases there that will have litigation throughout this year. And the only other thing I could say is that Governing Magazine recently wrote an article, and I can send it to you. It compares 20 cities in relation to litigation expenses and resolution of matters. I think Columbus compares quite favorably in that article, and I'll send it to you.
Good or bad, I actually read Governing Magazine, so you don't need to send it to me. But I did want to, and I appreciate you highlighting those settlements. It's one of the things that obviously makes the news, and so then the public asks about that. And I know we've talked, City Attorney, of kind of, these are good settlements. You guys do your diligence, know kind of the risk, and are making sure the taxpayers aren't paying more for any of those potential cases. It did seem a little high, and I know you all provided me kind of analysis of past years, but it was really those 2 outlier cases. Just curious if, with 80 pending, is that going to continue in terms of we think 2017 will knock down some of those, or it just kind of comes up when they come up?
I think, I'm hopeful we would be below that in the coming year. Again, 6 shooting cases can always lead to anything, so it's hard to tell. Most of those are very positive at this point in the litigation process. And the gas explosion cases, there will be some resolution of those matters. They've been worked on for a while, and they will continue to be worked on. So I think there will be some extra money involved in that.
I see you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Cinziano. Do you foresee that that any of the cases that will be coming forward in 2017, do you feel as though that the insurance policies that the different departments may have will take care of those situations, or do you see additional dollars that will have to either, I know there's I think $1 million that's in the mayor's budget, should there be any additional cost, but do you see anything past that $1 million that would have to be spent for any upcoming cases?
Frankly, I don't want to answer that question.
Okay.
We can't, it's dangerous to speculate when you're dealing with litigation. What we have tried to do in light of, we do not want to surprise anybody with something coming down the line. So one of the things that we are now doing through Mr. Mangan is we are prepared, and we send to you council members, we send to the mayor's office, we send to the public safety director and all departments who have cases, telling them what cases we have in the pipeline, tell them what the demands are. Now, because there's no such thing as secrets in our business, even though sometimes you can say attorney-client privilege, we don't give any indication as to what we think the case, what way the case is going. But we're going to keep you informed that there are a number of cases which then, if you wish to ask us questions about so that you're not surprised later, we're going to answer them for you. Now, one of the things that's very important to recognize, and I think we have said this repeatedly, when we face cases where there's an allegation of a violation of a constitutional or United States statutory right, mostly it's what we call these 1983 cases. That's a section of the United States Code in Title 47, which says if a government official under the color of law violates someone's constitutional or statutory rights, if we lose the case at trial, we not only pay the judgment, the verdict to the plaintiff, we then have to pay the attorney fees to the plaintiff's attorney. And I think you've heard me say this before, but several years ago, during my tenure, we went to trial on a case over in the United States Southern District where we believe that we had a good case. The jury came back and awarded the plaintiff $9,000. $9,000. Then I came before City Council and asked for $90,000 to pay the lawyer's fee. So when Mr. Mangan and his group sit down to evaluate cases, it's not as though we want to just try cases and not have to worry about attorney's fees, because we have to concern ourselves with whether or not, is this a risk we want to take? Now, if we didn't have to worry about attorney's fees, you'd probably see a lot more trials. But we are very prudent in how we balance what we see. And Mr. Mangan's an experienced lawyer who knows the value of the case. And then, quite frankly, oftentimes, I know maybe I'm not supposed to say this, but you always wonder, who's the judge that got the case? You know, we evaluate all sorts of things. I hope that answers your questions. But as far as, and I think, Chair Tyson, I think you used the phrase, some insurance that the departments have. There is no insurance. The city is a, quote, self-insured entity. In other words, we don't have an insurance carrier out there that's going to pay a claim against us. The city carries its own risks. In other words, if we get hit with a judgment, it's going to come out of the city budget. It's not going to come out of some. We're not paying premiums to insurance company to cover us for risk. In other words.
So when Public Utilities says that it's coming out of Public Utilities budget, so that sometimes is stated.
I am aware that finance will ask us, can you kind of project next year what you think we might have to pay out? And we can say, well, we can make a projection, but don't hold us to it. Because number one, you never know what the fact, at discovery on these cases, sometimes you're finding out things that say, oh my golly, we got a problem here. Or, oh, this case looks pretty good for us. So we try to give finance an idea of what they ought to set aside, but we don't like to tell people what that is, because the other side might say, oh, we know what you got, now give us part of that money. No, we're not going to go that. We're not going that route.
I just want to also just say thank you. If you go back to the other slide, just looking at the, just want to say thank you for your work and your team's work. And you look at that that we paid out $2.4 million, but there were a total of $29 million in asks to resolve a case. And so, but you were able to settle on those cases for 2.4. So I just
And
want to
that's
say
right.
thank you.
So when we cleared all the cases in 2016, 29
Is your mic
plus,
on? Is your mic on?
Yeah, $29 million was then taken off the book, so to speak,
But-
because those are gone, and we did settle for $2.4 million.
Yeah. And if I might, this article about how we stack up with other cities, it is remarkable that you look at our number, and I don't know, Tim, do you have any of those numbers there you can just spout off to give some idea about? I mean,
Spout off?
there's been some, you know, some of these cities paying out substantial sums, and you compare to what Columbus has, it's one of two things. It's either we're great lawyers telling our people not to make mistakes, or we got good department heads out there and good police officers and firefighters doing a heck of a good job to limit our liability. And I think it's the latter, as well as our good legal work, of course.
Well, there's 20 cities, so it's hard to go through, but we compare some of the payouts that are going out to some cities are in the $10, $20 million range over a year period of time. And when they average their litigation expenses, some of those are 3, 4, 5, 6 times what we have. There's 20 cities in there, so I can't go through all of them, but.
Who's up?
Me.
Okay, me.
Good
Thank
evening.
Pam.
I'm Pam Gordon. I'm the chief of the Labor and Employment section, and together with the 4 other attorneys in our group, we handle all of the labor and employment litigation for the city. So we do arbitrations, lawsuits, and then we have hearings in front of several different administrative bodies. I think one of the things that it's difficult to put a dollar value on with our group is what we do before something becomes a lawsuit. We really want our clients to call and talk to us before they take employment action. We can help them evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of their case, and in doing so, we can actually prevent litigation. So that's really one of the things that we work very hard with our clients on. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Nancy Weidman, and I am the head of the City Attorney's Claims and Collections Group. My section is comprised of 4 attorneys, 2 legal investigators, and 4 administrative support staffers. Our staff handles pre-litigation claims made against the city when the amount in question is over $2,500. We advise and we train city divisions and departments on the handling of claims that are under $2,500, and we collect delinquent debt owed to the city. With respect to that delinquent debt, you can imagine that the Income Tax Division is one of our largest clients and accounts for the bulk of the cases that we file. As of, November 30th of 2016, we filed 2,524 tax collection cases in the Franklin County courts. This is fewer than the number of cases we filed at this same time last year, but at the same time, we diverted over 1,300 cases to our outside agencies for collection under a prejudgment program that we began last year. This program sends our low-dollar tax delinquencies direct to collection, keeps the cases out of the municipal court, and allows delinquent tax debtors another opportunity to take care of their debt without the additional expense and aggravation of going to court. Looking forward, we will be working with the Municipal Court Clerk's Office on their e-filing project. Our civil tax cases are scheduled to be some of the first to go into that process, and we look forward to sort of implementing our own in-house procedures to make that a working proposition. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Laura Baker-Morrish, and I'm the Chief Prosecutor. I oversee the day-to-day operations in the Prosecutor Division located at 375 South High Street, the Franklin County Municipal Court. We have 26 attorneys. Some of them specialize in domestic violence, environmental court, appellate attorneys, trial staff attorneys. We also have a staff of advocates, administrative assistants, law clerks, and intake staff. We prosecute misdemeanors in the Franklin County Municipal Court, adult misdemeanors, and we've been working over the last year to try to bring us out of the paper and staple age and into the electronic age. We are working now on implementing an electronic case management system. We are in the 18th month of that particular process, taking everything that we've done in paper and staples and pens and papers and moving it into electronic. In order to do that, we've been grateful for the support of council, both in the capital improvement budget item that we received for the software, but also Wi-Fi is being installed in the Franklin County Municipal Court, which is amazing. We didn't have that. It's being installed literally as we speak. I saw the guy earlier this week. We are looking and doing all of these things in order to create better efficiencies because we recognize that body camera footage is coming. We have made an expansion request this year in the budget in recognition of body camera video coming our way. We have been working to develop systems whereby we can receive video. That's not yet ironed out as we're working now with the, now that the vendor has been identified, on systems whereby we can obtain that information in a more ready fashion. We are hoping, and we have been working with the court to have the means available to stream live into the courtrooms so that we have less downloads and need to replicate on DVDs and flash drives, but some of that's still going to be necessary. And we're also working with the electronic case management system to develop an electronic means of providing discovery to defense so that they can view those body camera videos as well.
So I think you hit one of the other questions that I had in terms of what all is being done to prepare for the body cameras. It's a big budget item, a lot of moving pieces. Anything in addition to the two you highlighted in the presentation that either the whole department or office is looking at or just within your division?
It's difficult to anticipate how much of an impact it's going to have and when it's going to have that impact. We understand that the first rollout will be approximately 100 officers, and while that doesn't sound like a lot when you think about the entire division of police, the ones that are anticipated to come first is freeway and traffic. That is the lion's share of our work. So right now, we're receiving cruiser video on many of those cases, but to be honest with you, we don't obtain the video for all of them. And when you're going to add body camera video as well, we're just trying to lay in wait and kind of see how long it's going to take us to review all these materials. I think ultimately it's going to be beneficial to prosecution. We're going to see a lot of the things that we really couldn't see, and we're going to have the ability to have that and bring it live into the courtroom. But in terms of how much it's going to impact our office function, our office flow, we're putting our best guess first and saying in the expansion, at least one additional attorney, and that's so we can kind of spread out the work of watching and reviewing video. A paralegal, that request is to assist us in obtaining, identifying, and then providing the video. And then 2 administrative assistants, again, that's to try and move all of the collection of evidence into an earlier stage so that we can have time to focus on the body cameras itself. The biggest impact we think will be a little bit further down the line. Right now, we don't receive much video on domestic violence cases, but most DV cases are 2-officer runs, and if they're both wearing body cameras, we're talking about cameras on both of them that we're going to have to review. So we know that's coming down the line.
Good evening. I'm Annie Murray. I'm the director of the Domestic Violence and Stalking Unit. Chief Prosecutor Laura Baker Morris just segued nicely into what's coming our way. We have 4 dedicated domestic violence prosecutors, as well as about 15 courtroom advocates that handle all of the domestic violence and stalking cases in our municipal court. Last year, our prosecutors handled about 4,000 cases and about 3,800 victims. Most of the victims are coming to court at least twice. We handle a lot of walk-in clients as well. We are anticipating that next year we are making the move to remove all the DV cases to 5 specialized DV prosecutors so that we will be solely handling all of the domestic violence cases up in our unit. We are also anticipating, as the body cameras come our way, that we will have a lot more work to try to figure out how to review all of that evidence, because they are 2-person runs, and we will also have the victims to deal with in those cases. We are lucky enough in our unit to be part of a tremendous coordinated community response in terms of domestic violence, and we coordinate the lethality assessment program here in Central Ohio, which has been a really successful program, getting law enforcement to work with Choices, our local shelter, to help keep the victims safe.
Hello, my name is Melanie Tobias, and welcome to the wild and exciting world of criminal appeals. Our appellate unit consists of 2 attorneys, a paralegal, and anywhere from 5 to 10 law clerks. In addition to handling all of the appellate work, criminal appellate work arising out of the Franklin County Municipal Court, our unit trains our trial staff to keep them up to date on case law, legal trends, legislation, dealing with misdemeanor law, so that they're always aware of what's going on in the General Assembly and in the appellate court in Franklin County and around the state. We also serve, I like to think of us as like a phone a friend for the trial staff, so they have very large dockets and are very busy in the courtroom, and questions will come up, issues will be raised. They don't have the time on the fly in the courtroom to be able to run something on Lexis or get the legal answer, and a lot of times, frankly, the court's looking to us to provide that answer. So the attorneys on the trial staff can contact myself or the other attorney in the unit to get answers to those questions. That way we can protect the integrity of what's going on in the trial courtroom, and that always helps to protect the record for issues that arise on appeal. The appellate unit also works closely with the chief prosecutor to advise counsel and work with counsel on various criminal legislation issues. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Robert Tobias. I am related to Melanie Tobias. I am the director of the Prosecution Resources Unit. I currently supervise 7 full-time employees and 17 part-time employees. The primary function of the Prosecution Resources Unit is the intake section, and that's where citizens who believe they're victims of misdemeanor crime can come to file a criminal complaint, and most of the time attempt to pursue a criminal charge. Last year we had almost 3,000 complaints come through our unit. We anticipate about the same for this year, and that number's remained steady for several years now. Because most of those complaints do not result in criminal charges, we offer other services for citizens who come in. We provide a lot of community resource referrals, and we also offer helpful information about protection orders, both criminal and civil protection orders. In addition to the intake section, I also supervise our mediation program, which helps citizens deal with disputes, and that's got a high success rate. Additionally, we have a check program helping merchants deal with checks that are written on insufficient accounts and closed accounts. And also, I oversee a theft diversion program as well. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Furby. I'm Chief Legal Advisor for the Division of Police. Myself and Dina Overking give 24/7 legal advice to the police. We do it differently than when I first started in this job. Mr. Pfeiffer told me when I got the job, get out in the field and talk to people. You'll hear Rick say that a lot. And so that's how we've approached this. We do that. We engage the police in a legal dialogue, basically, to observe civil rights, to enforce the law, and to balance those two things. We do that through training. We do hundreds of hours of police training a year. When I first started in this job, we did no police training. And now we do all legal in-service training for the police. Myself and Dina see every police officer for 2 hours a year through about 50 or 60 sessions of in-service on all 3 shifts. We use cases from the Division of Police. We use videos.
Does that mean you don't do an 8 to 5 hour job?
We do it all day. But we use videos. You've talked about the body cameras. We use cruiser videos now largely, good and bad, where we talk to officers about the legal lessons they can learn from these things. And the Division of Police is very engaged in that and enjoy it. We do all recruit legal training, so we start with them from the day they get here till the day they leave, trying to create a constant flow of legal information to them. We put out legal updates and videos every month, trying to get more information out. And what this leads to is the 24/7 contacts. The officers call us and say, hey, look, I remember this coming up in training. Now I'm out in the field. I have a question. We get those calls at night. We get emails. We have direct walk-ins. You know, and one thing I try to keep in mind is that being a modern police officer is really hard. And what I tell them at training is my job is to try to get them the legal information to get through this. Other people teach them how to wrestle and use their weapons, but we try to give them the legal information to help them observe civil rights but enforce the law at the same time. And I think we've been pretty successful, and Mr. Pfeiffer's been incredibly supportive of us over the last, decade or so. So thank you.
Just really curious how unique that one-on-one engagement is, having someone from the office be part of at least 2 hours for every officer in terms of their training. I know I've seen you out and about, either at the Police Academy or in other presentations, and just how unique that is, and maybe part of why our liability is not maybe as high as some other cities as well.
I think it's unusual. When they first approached us with it, said we want to do this all 3 shifts. You stood back and thought, boy, I'm going to be out there nights and at 4 in the morning. And Steve Dunbar sitting beside me did that with me for years. We were out there sometimes 80 times in 6 weeks. It's unusual, but it's probably one of the best things we do in that the officers engage us. When we send stuff out to them, they read it, and then I think it goes away a little bit. When you're there, you can have an actual conversation about it. They can challenge you, you can challenge them. And when you're showing them a video of perhaps a bad legal decision, it's very effective, and it creates a good dialogue. So I think it's unusual. I think most police departments don't have that available to them, to be honest. Mr. Pfeiffer's made us available. When I went to him and said they want us to come train at night, he said, get out there, do it. And it's been a great thing. I think all of us who've done it felt like it's one of the best things we do.
Thank you, Chairman. Jeff, I just want to, I'm applauding all of you, but certainly to think only 2 people have responsibility for 24/7 is pretty significant, because certainly 2 things. One, as Chairman Stenziano just mentioned, just the one-on-one training helps you to build relationships, and building relationships and partnerships is always key, so that people then get to know you as an individual, as somewhat of a colleague, to be there to be supportive of them, and then to be so that they feel very comfortable in calling you and asking you questions. So I applaud Rick for you doing that. But then again, just what two people who have other family commitments and to be available 24/7 is, all I can say is kudos to you. And I want to say thank you to your families, because certainly I know that we're on all the time, but 24/7 for two people, I commend you and your family. Thank you.
If I might also add, in terms of what not only Jeff does, but the office, Mr. Furby puts out a legal update. It's a document that talks about current legal issues. That goes to our police officers, but Mr. Furby, where else does that go?
Over time, we found that all of our officers were sending it out to all their other officer friends around the state, and a lot of them started emailing us and saying, hey, can we just get on your list?
How many people are on our list? To whom do we send? How many people get this?
It's about 75 other agencies or so that get it. But, you know, I went to Rick when we first got that request, and, you know, and I give all the credit to Rick, because we would work on these things. I go to Rick and say, hey, everybody else wants to get these. What do you think? Send them. Be a good partner.
But the only problem is we don't get any royalties. And the other thing Jeff does is, you know, people's attention, like these things, what's your attention span, you know? I mean, the question is, so police officers, one of the things we do is we do videos. And I specifically told Jeff, you cannot make the video more than 3.5 minutes.
That was Rick's idea. He said, make a legal video in 3 minutes. And I said, that's too short. I can't give legal advice on a topic in 3 minutes. He said, make it 3 minutes. And I thought that was crazy short. But then after we put one out, every officer grabbed me and said, that was great. It was really short. So Rick was right.
But not only does Jeff's work get out to other people, but the Ohio Municipal Attorneys Association has these annual CLEs. And how many of these folks you see here, they are presenters at the Ohio Municipal Attorneys Association's CLEs. And I think it speaks well for the office. I mean, I always tell our folks, make sure Mark Rutkus knows when you're out there telling people, because I want to tell the world about what you're doing. I want to toot our horn to let people know these attorneys, municipal attorneys, and, you know, and that sometimes there's a class distinction. Oh, I don't work at 41 South High Street. I'm just a government lawyer. These people are government lawyers. They're outstanding and very competent, and they share their knowledge with other folks around the country, around the state, and we don't get any royalties for it. But it's good for everybody.
Hi, I'm Steve Dunbar. I run the City Attorney's Zone Initiative. The Zone Initiative is a section of our office that we created about 10 years ago. Fundamentally, Rick, when we were created, tasked us with, one, go out in the community and listen to the people, listen to the police officers, see what their concerns are. Two, come back to the office and figure out what the heck we can do about it. So we have 5 attorneys, including myself. We are divided along the lines of the Division of Police zones. As you know, the Division of Police divides the city into 5 geographical zones. We have an attorney assigned to each zone. We do the community meetings in that area, police roll calls out into the substations, morning, noon, and night, work with other city clients, fire, code, building, health, that work in those areas. So that is the listening in. You see there a summary, community meetings, police meetings, our code enforcement meetings, our 5 attorneys have done over the last year. Then we come back to figure out what to do about it. Primarily, it turns into nuisance abatement litigation. Those are lawsuits primarily filed in Judge Hawkins' courtroom and environmental court. 2 big buckets they fall into. They're all lawsuits against pieces of properties along with their owners and occupants. Bucket A is properties with chronic criminal activity, primarily violent crime, drugs, prostitution. That could be anything from the neighborhood drug house to an apartment complex or a big box club downtown with chronic criminal problems. Other bucket is the property code violations, so properties that physically have code violations. That can be anything from the vacant abandoned houses throughout the city that are deteriorating physically, or occupied houses, rentals with substandard or unsafe living conditions. And then the final piece we have here, as you all know, the liquor permit violations. Every year, you all decide who to send to the Department of Liquor Control to contest their liquor renewal. We present those to you, you vote on them, and then we litigate those in the administrative process. Thank you very much.
And if I might add, in terms of this, we are very fortunate to have the Environmental Division of the Franklin County Municipal Court. Judge Hawkins is the judge there. Now, what we have is one place we can take these cases where there is a judge with the knowledge and the sense of what's going on, and we find that very beneficial. Now, obviously, we don't get what we want unless we present the necessary evidence, but this community benefits significantly that other communities don't because we have this exclusive jurisdiction, the Environmental Division. And let me just mention also about the objections to renewal of liquor permits. We get many, and you especially as council members hear this from citizens, that bar, it's causing us a problem. Well, we work very closely with the Vice and other city agencies to examine these permit holders to see if there is credible, sufficient evidence that we can object to the renewal. In the process, there are a lot of citizens that are upset, are distressed that for some reason we are not going forward with objecting to certain permits renewal. And the reason we're not is we have to have credible evidence that there are violations that justify that. So if you look at our record of the ones that we object to, we've been very successful in getting the higher-ups in the state administration to agree that these permits should be not renewed. And I know we're working on an issue right now where we have an unhappy constituent, but we'll work with that issue.
Good evening. My name is Dave Peterson. I'm the Chief Real Estate Attorney for the Columbus City Attorney's Office. We have 8 full-time employees, 3 of which are attorneys. We also have 3 full-time real estate specialists and 1 part-time. Our office is responsible for all land acquisitions, whether it's easements, whether it's fee title. We're actively involved in acquisitions for all departments, utilities, public service, recreation and parks, finance, et cetera. And we're currently working on 19 different projects. Last year, we closed approximately 369 permanent land acquisitions. That could be fee and or easements. Does not include temporary easements. Next year, we're projected to have another 250 parcels coming to our office, so it's going to be another busy year, and that's usually tied to the capital budget. Thank you.
In summary, we're asking that council agree to this budget for us that's presented to you. If you do that, you're going to allow us to have about $12.8 million general fund money, which will support 124 full-time employees, 62 of whom are lawyers, and it will support 38 part-time employees. So you've seen the folks that do the work in the office. You've heard the presentation of what they do. This is basically a continuation budget, except for the need to add those folks because of the body-worn camera issue. But thank you very much for our opportunity to present to you. And as you know, we are always available to you to answer your questions. You may not like our answers, but we'll return your phone call and give you an answer.
City Attorney Pfeiffer, just to say thank you for this presentation. I know this will be maybe you're happy about this, your last budget.
Nope.
Oh, you have one more budget.
No, I got another year on the government payroll. So,
oh, yeah, you're right. You will be able to.
Okay. You're going to see me next one more time.
Yeah, maybe you'll present next year to us. Yeah, at the end of the year, 2017, get your 2018's budget. But anyway, thank you. I'm glad you're making that clear. You're saying it on the camera, on TV, that you will be here next December. Next December, since everybody's heard it, next December, we'll be seeing you in chambers again. We all can, God willing. So, again, I just want to say thank you. This is always a hearing that I enjoy because you bring your whole team and showcase them. And I know that tonight is a later hearing than usual, but I just really appreciate the work that each of you do for the residents of our community, for the employees of the City of Columbus. I know that whenever I have any issues, I can pick up the phone and call Rick, call Josh, call whomever I need to talk to, and I appreciate that. And the advice that you give me, I take that advice. So I appreciate, I worked with Pam for a long time at Civil Service. I've had relationships, but just want to say thank you. Thank you for the work that you do for our community.
Thank you, President Pro Tem, City Attorney, and your staff.